was in her glory. She loved that. She was really fun. So, oh, I wrote, we laughed our asses off, because she liked to say that. And then one day she calls me and says, guess what? Because she would always say that. And I'd say, I don't know what. And then she'd say, no, guess. And I go, well, there's a universe of guesses. I don't know. Planted a tree in your yard. You're thinking about getting a puppy. No, keep going. I'm like, it would go on and on. And then she says, guess what? She goes, I got a ukulele. Now, of all the guesses in the world, that was and I'm like, a ukulele? And she's like, yeah, I'm playing the ukulele. Well, okay, so that was one of them. Haha, she was so spontaneous and unexpected. The ukulele was then joined by a keyboard, and she just always kept expanding her interest, always learning, always evolving. And so I would take from her that passion to be ever evolving, learning, and exploring. And I would like to emulate that zest for life. So Annie, I bid you adieu for now. I know you met Mike, Dancer, Sue, and all the others at the Rainbow Bridge. Godspeed on your journey. Shine on.
Thank you.
Very good.
That was, and I want you to know that I told Jen when I gave her the ukulele that I expected. But you know what? This was far better than any ukulele songs.
What is Annie getting reincarnated? She's telling me the truth. That I don't want to do. But someday I will.
I know.
I'll learn something on the ukulele.
I know. All right. Let me say mine, and then we'll be here. You can hold that.
Hold that.
Here, I'll just show you. See, it's a
It's a GoPro camera.
A what?
GoPro. Put it on your helmet.
You can go to places.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
I've
had
seen
to, I
the
had
kids
to,
GoPro
I
that
had
you
to,
could stick under your
to laugh
skateboard.
too, you
Oh,
know,
wow,
because it was
that
always
sounds
like
good.
with Annie, you know, and I always think of the Wagner song, you know, the song that's basically all hail, you know, the king is entering the room, and I always thought whenever I'd say, you know, I'd be like, Dita la le Christina, you know, because she's like, she goes, Pro Christi, and she'd be, but I mean, it was always funny. And then when she was talking about, you know, she hit the spot about things that you never knew, you know, that you just like, you know, Carol and I, we were there, and there was like, she loved to shop at Amazon and get things. And Carol was like, look at all these boxes. It was like, she's like, should we see what's in them? And I said, let's open them up.
A drone, mind you.
What is she gonna do? That's right on the neighborhood. It was so funny, and we were like, you know, but it was batteries, and we were like, batteries? And drone parts, and we're like, drone parts, and then there was the drone in the bedroom. I'm like, yeah, you got it. Why not? Right there in the bedroom.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But it was just always. And you know, you know, Jen had a lot of her catch-all phrases, but one of them that I always loved is, "Let me tell you something." that was always, you were like, okay, I've got to, you know, and it was usually because I said something that she didn't agree with, or something of that nature. But you know, my first memories were, I thought she was the coolest. I mean, when I first met her when I was little, she was in Texas, and I was like, I got a relative named Ann Texas. How cool is that? And then I went to her house, and there are all these horses, and I'm like, I just fell in love with her from that day on, because and her outrageousness, outspokenness, you know, all that just kind of, and to me too, because we've had a lot of losses in the Wasserman side of the family. You know, my uncle Esky passed away, my mother's mother Charlotte. So there were a lot of people I never knew really from that side. Love you, cousin Robert. And so for me to have this, what I would call wacky Wasserman, to know was such a privilege and a joy to get to know a part of that. Although she didn't like being called the wacky Wasserman. She'd be all, you know, I'm not wacky. And so we'd have little arguments at Agawam Diner. That was the, you know, the main hangout there about that.
Oh, haven't you been there?
And, you know, she was highly intelligent. And
Oh, yeah,
like
I
I
remember
said, you
that.
probably might see if you look over, there's a little thing with like poems of when she was a child, which are absolutely, you know, and letters to her parents that are really, really funny that you might want to peruse through after we have with the snack. But when she went and got her trucker's license, what did she tell her mom? Was it Lois? Who did she tell that to? Her father. She said, guess what? I'm now going to be the smartest trucker in the United States.
Carousel trucking.
Carousel trucking, exactly. So that was one of the things. And I loved her outspokenness. One of my fondest memories of her when I was at Agawam Diner. It was a hot day, sunny, and this couple came in and sat down, and they left their dog in the car with the windows rolled down this much. And I knew Annie was due like any minute, so I knew the dog was going to be okay for that time. And she comes in, and I was going to say to her, there's a dog, you know, out there.
Didn't get a
She
chance.
She always parked on that side of Agawam, and she like immediately saw the dog in the car. And she comes in, and oh boy, those people went running out to that dog. And I mean, she was just like, you know, it was a really, let me tell you something. And then and instead it was, let me tell you something. You've got 1 minute to get out there and get that dog out of the car, or I'm calling the police on you. You know, and I was just like, I always loved it when, you know, and sometimes I would beg her to, you know, will you please go after this person or that person, you know, on Facebook or whatever. I was just like, do something. You know, I said on my Facebook page, I'd like, help, you know, come onto my page and help. And so she was always just wonderful about that. I mean, and, you know, and I loved it when she'd look at me and she'd, you know, it was her favorite saying, I think, when we'd be sitting there together, and she'd look at the two of us and say, you know, she'd look at me and she'd say, Susan, are you crazy? And I'd be like looking at her like, you know, what are you? You know, so it was, you know, she was just so fun. She was so fun and just exuberant with life. And, you know, and one of the things that I just loved too is she always had your back. And, you know, you could count on her. And, like, she would always be like, Susan, you know, because, you know, my life hasn't exactly ended up where I thought it would be. And she was always saying to me, Susan, you know, if you ever need to, you'll always have a place with me. And that was her, you know, that was her. And, you know, and I'm going to miss her so much. And I'm also going to miss hearing her, you know, in all her glory say, you know, what the F, Susan, you know? That was another classic. Let me tell you, and what the F. So I'm just gonna, you know, and just miss her so much. And I swear, when I was putting her Native American dress on her in the hospital, she just had this look like, she was like this big smile on her face. I was like, Mom, she's smiling at us. And then when she was all dressed, it was like this solemn look on her face. So it was all the way to the end and beyond. I have to say, Joni, I haven't met you yet in person. I don't know where she, there you are. But I asked her, the day after she died, I went on a rock dig. I had to just smash open some rocks with my geology club. And I said, I want to hear, you know, a message from you, which I've had a lot of messages since then. But I said, I really would like one message from you. And I said, play like my favorite childhood song. And for some reason, I was like thinking Elton John, you know, Crocodile Rock, a couple other songs that I loved, you know, that School's Out for Summer, those things. Totally blanked until I got in the car after the dig, of which I found the most rock of this one type that had ever been pulled from this mine, you know, ever. and I was like in this massive pile of it that I found, and everybody was freaking out, like, you know, look at all this stuff. And I thought it was just normal until someone said, no, that's not normal what you have there. And on the way home, I was turned on the radio, and right when I turned on the radio, wolves started howling on the radio, and I was like, I just could feel, you know, my hair is going up and over my head, and it was I don't know why I blanked on it, but it was Hush by Deep Purple. And that song, like, I loved that as a kid. And I was like, oh my God, you know, this is so Annie to pick the one. It's not a real wolf, you know, but it's meant to be wolves howling, and then the song plays, and I said, quintessential Annie, you know, there. She would pick the perfect song that's perfect for me and perfect for her. So, you know, she's out there watching over us. So, thanks.
Thank you.
That metal thing was in your mouth? Yes. Oh.
I think the girl was looking at you. Oh, are you looking at me? No.
Everyone probably wants to say something about Anne, but you know, we do have time restraints, and you know, if you haven't spoken but you want to say something about Anne, just say it. We're going to be out here, and if you want to talk to somebody about something particular you knew about Anne, you went to a restaurant, you got kicked